Hi everyone, so we're going to look at how we can make this simple calculator using PHP. So you can see here if we add like numbers 1 plus 2, we're going to get a result of 3. So we're going to see how we can do this using the MVC model with PHP. So let's create a project first. I'm going to make a brand new folder on my desktop and I'll just call it calculator with MVC, calculator PHP with MVC, just so we know that this is going to be for a PHP example. And we're going to create a bunch of files here. So here at the root of the project, we're going to create a index.php. And inside the index.php, this is where we're going to initialize the setup of where how the project will run. So I'll just set up $sign PHP, and this will be for error reporting. And I'm going to say there's a directory that will go into views, and then we'll go into home.php because we're going to be using the MVC model. And the MVC model is models, views, and controllers. So I will make folders for that. Controllers, and then models, and one more here. And I guess I'll call it views. I'll call it views there. So what I'm going to be doing is inside the views, I'll just set up the basic format of the form that we're going to be setting up. So in the views, I'll make a home.php. And then this is where we're going to set up the doc type. We're going to set up the HTML as to what it will look like. And I'll just close the HTML tag. Meta charset equals UTF-8. Title. Let's call it simple calculator. And I'll put the style in here for now because we don't really need to be too fancy right now. I'll just put the style directly in the head. And the style is really just going to make the form look a little bit more prettier. I'm just going to copy and paste the stylization part into here, and you guys can copy this stylization. It's just because it'll save a little more time here if you want to pause the video and write that down. And then under the head section, I will make the body. And now what I'll do is, let me set up the form here inside the body. And the form will have an action. I will set that up a little bit later. H2. It's going to be an action and a method later. So H2, we'll call it simple calculator. And then a label. And we'll put the label as number 1 and 4 num1, and then input. So this is just for the first input field. Type is equal to number. name is equal to num1, ID is equal to num1. And I'll just put a breakpoint to go into the next line, and we'll make another label here. And I'll call operator. And this is where we're going to have a drop down of stuff. So for operator, and we're going to have a selection here. Select name, operator, ID is equal to operator. Select, it's going to close here. And we're going to have some options for add, option, add, subtract, multiply, divide. And I'll just add another breakpoint to start a new line. And then we'll have a label. And we'll have another number, so the second number before num2. Oops. That should be on the label. 4 is equal to num2. And under this label, we'll have a input type is equal to number, and a name of num2, ID of num2, and we'll make that required, and we'll set a new line now. And we'll have an input of type equals for the submit button, and the value will just say calculate. Calculate. Okay. And now what we need to do is we need to handle this logic when people put in some sort of numbers and select the operator. So this is where we're going to have a form action, and inside our controllers, this is where we're going to handle whatever we need to. So for the controllers, let's make a file inside controllers. And I'll say calculator controller .php. And we're going to require once. We're going to have to also make a models which does the logic. For now, I'll just call calculator model.php here. And we'll have a class of calculator controller. And we'll put a public function index result and we have to use $signs in front of the variables. So if the form is submitted successfully, we need to process the input. So if server request method is equal to, strictly equal to post, then we'll do something. So we'll do num1, set a post for num1. We'll grab the value of num1, we'll put it into num1 PHP value, and we're going to do the same for num2. Because here num1 here is coming from the home page num1, which is actually here, the number. So we're trying to grab whatever the num1 is, and we're trying to store it. Here again, num2, we're trying to grab the value for num2, and because it's required, we're going to store something there. And now we want to also grab the operator. Post, and we're going to find that operator. Okay, so we got operator. And now that we got that, we are now going to use the calculator from our new calculator model, which we'll set up shortly. And then based on whatever the result is, we're going to base it off the calculator. We're going to have a calculate function for num1. We're passing in num1 and num2 and the operator. And to make sure we can see something on the screen, we need to include the views home.php so we could still see that page. And under here we just need to close that PHP, and we're going to also put in here controller is equal to new calculator controller, and the controller index, so we could trigger that the controller, it creates a calculator controller, a new one, and then we're calling index right away, so this could be ran, and then we're going to check to see what the method, request method is like. And because we still need to connect the pages here, so here in the home.php, we are going to have to connect the controller. And what we can do here in the action, we'll just put ... to go into controllers. We're going back. The 2 dots means we're going to go out of the home.php, out of this views folder, go to the root of the project, and then we're going to go into the controllers folder. And then we're going to use the file called calculator controller.php, and the method is a post. Post means that we're going to be passing over some sort of values, and that should be good. And now when we go back to the calculator controller, we are going to have to connect this calculator controller now to our models, because the models, we're creating that calculator based off our model. The model is what's going to be doing all the calculations for us. So inside the models folder, we're going to make a file called calculator model.php. So let's set up the PHP file, and we'll call class calculator model, and I'm just going to close the PHP file there. And I'll put we're going to have a calculator, so I'm going to put public function calculator, or calculate, because we're going to call this, we're actually calling it from our calculator controller. It's calling calculate, we're just passing in the 3 different values. So we're passing in some arguments in order to use it in the parameters here. So we have the num1, num2 operator, and we have, now let's make a switch statement. So based on whatever the operator is, we are going to perform a specific task. Add, return. If it's an add, then we want num1 plus num2. If it's case subtract, then we'll return num1 minus num2. Case multiply, it'll be return num1 multiplied by num2, and then case divide. So if we're dividing, that means if we have to check first if num2 is greater than 0, or we could say if num3 is not equal to 0. If num2 is greater than 0, then what we're going to do is we're going to return num1 divided by num2, because we're not going to allow 0 or negative numbers. Else it will return cannot divide by 0 or negative number. And then we have a default, so if nothing else works, or for some reason there's a random other thing that returns that's being used, then we'll say invalid operator. Now what we see we have a class for calculator model. We have a method here for calculate with our 3 variables that we want to use, the 3 parameters here. And based on whatever the operator is, that will determine what happens with the value, whatever is being returned. And this calculator model is being used here inside the controllers. So the controller is just what's first checking if it's a post method, and if it is, then we can start assigning the values, create that calculator model, and call that method to pass over those values. So we have some arguments here, and then because this index is being called, it's going to trigger it, which is going to trigger that model to be ran. And because we have this front end here, we also need to make sure that we're able to display the final result. So what we're going to do is, everything is good here. We just need to check to see, because we're going to grab something from the calculator controller, we're going to have to check to see if the result is empty or not. So we're going to get some sort of result back, and this is the result. And because it's going to be included in the home page, we're going to be able to reference that result variable on the home page as well. This is just basically being pasted on top of this home page here, or pasted at the bottom of it. And what we're going to do here is, below the form, we're going to check to see it's a PHP thing, and we're going to check to see if it's not empty, the result, if it's not empty, then we're going to do something. So the 2 dots just means we're going to carry out this if statement. We're going to have a div so we can stylize if we need to. And inside this div, so this div we're going to have a class is equal to result. And we'll have a h2. And we'll just put result as that title, and then a paragraph, and we're going to have a PHP, and we'll just echo out that result. So we'll echo the result so we can see what's being displayed, and we need to end this if statement. In order to do that, we need to put another PHP at the bottom here, and we'll just say end if. There we go. So we need to know when this if statement stops, so we just need to put the end if at the bottom. So now let's see if we can run this. In order to run this, let me just make a readme file here at the root of the project. And I'll paste it here so you guys could see. We're just going to do php-s localhost 8000 or whatever number you want to put there. Okay, so I'll do php-s localhost 8000. php-s. Okay, so it looks like we might have some sort of error here. Let me see. Okay, so let's try running it one more time. Address, oh I see. Okay, it's because I'm already running it right here, so let me just close that. And I'm going to just run it one more time here. Okay, I'm just going to put localhost, let's say 9000. There we go, so it says started now. So there we go, I'm at localhost 9000. Let me check why I have that extra little piece of code down there. I don't want to show that piece of code. Must just be a small typo somewhere. Oh, it's right there. I can get rid. That's interesting. Because that PHP ends that one. I see. Right. Okay, so that's part of this one. And I'll fix that indenting so it looks nicer. There we go. That makes more sense. Now refresh. There we go. So this is what it looks like. We got simple calculator title. We got the number. Let's put in 1 operator plus 2 calculate 3. Let's put 3 minus 1. Three minus 1. Okay, because they're all add. Okay, that's why. Subtract, multiply, divide. So we have to make sure these are all different, or else it's all gonna do the same thing. So add for plus, subtract for minus, multiply for that star, and divide for that /. And because all these values are what's being checked here inside the model, the operator, it's being passed over by the operator. You can see here, it's checking for that operator symbol because we are saying that it is a type of operator. So we're going to pass over the operator into the calculate method, and based on whatever value that operator is, it will do what it needs to do. And let me try now. Let me refresh. Continue. Okay, so let's do 1 plus 1, 2 minus 1, let's do 5 minus 1. Okay, we need to fix this still. I think what I'll do is maybe I'll just restart this server here. I'll do Option or Control C to end it, and then I'll rerun the localhost 9000. Refresh this. Let's see if this fixes it now. So I'll do number 2 plus 2, 4, good. And let's say 5 minus 2, 3, that's good. And let's put 10 minus 1, 9, good. Let's do 2 multiplied by 3, 6, perfect. Let's do 10 divided by 5, 2, nice. So it looks like this calculator is working now. Just need to make sure we restart the server whenever we make some sort of changes at the front end. But you can see here that we got this calculator, this code working.